Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Geography Girl. And today I wanted to tell you a story about a woman human cannibalist. Not a cannibalist, but a cannonballist. Yes, this is someone that is literally fired out of a cannonball. And this is not just any woman, this is the first woman to ever have done it. So I felt like her story should be shared. Her name was Rosa Matilda Richter, but she went by the stage name ZAZEL, and she was an icon. She was an acrobat, and she was a total daredevil. This is her story from trapeze in churches to cannon fire, to the heights of stardom, to the crushing fall that ended it all. So let's dive in. Rosa Matilda Richter, stage name ZAZEL, was an incredible woman. She was the daughter of a dancer and a talent acquisitionist, so she was always destined to be a performer. Rather than spending her schooling years reading and writing, she spent her younger years learning how to trapeze, how to tightrope walk, and just other general circus shenanigans. She was taught in a church that was falling apart, and she had a dangerous childhood, falling but always getting back up again, led by her parents who were always having her teeter on the edge of some danger. In a stroke of fate, she got her debut when a peer who was supposed to be one of Cinderella's sisters had to drop out, so she took to the role and the audience absolutely loved her. She was an instant success from the age of 6 years old and spent her years honing her craft. By the age of 12, she flew the nest. She joined a Japanese acrobatic troupe that was travelling across Europe, developing not only her skills but her reputation. And she was loved for these skills, like she had such a natural flair, but she was also loved for being fearless. While she had nerves of steel and was hard as nails, she did, as you can imagine, have a lot of accidents. One, when she was younger, was particularly bad, and things were not looking good for Rosa. She managed to pull through, but it made her father really second guess his choice of raising her within the circus. He did not recover emotionally from this event, and he forbade her from performing. But her mother disagreed and wanted to do whatever she could do to make her the star of the show. It was at this time that a famous daredevil named Farani was looking for a small, light person to take part in his first debut cannonball act. And Rosa, being a teenager at the time, really well fit the bill. Rosa's dad swore years ago that she would never take part in one of Farani's performances, saying that Farani should never have a dog of mine, much less a daughter, for his dangerous performances. So Ernst was not a fan of the idea, but Rosa's mum managed to strong-arm him and trick him into it, much to the surprise of so many people, by convincing him and lying to him basically that she was just going to be singing and dancing in his performance. The first act began in April 1877 and the audience held its breath when Rosa, under the name ZAZEL, got into the cannonball in her red and pink costume. No one moved a muscle or even dared to breathe as she clambered in and signalled that she was ready. And as quickly as this all started with smoke and a flash, Rosa was found meters away from the cannonball, having survived her first cannonball event. And she didn't just survive, she made history as the first person to ever be shot out of a cannonball. And this performance hurled her from the jaws of death into the arms of fame. But this was not it for ZAZEL. She continued to perform dangerous acts, emboldened perhaps by her survival, like high diving and tightrope walking. And she faced so many other anxiety-inducing events too. One being a teenage girl in a male-dominated environment. She had to strip down, not wearing a lot, which was in a very reserved Victorian environment. Her body was spoken on a lot. And this was a time where even women exercising was met with eyebrow raising and the clutching of pearls. And so her performing at the top of her game and just being a fucking daredevil bad bitch, she faced a lot of criticism. She also faced a lot of criticism for A, showing too much of her body, and B, not showing enough of her body. This is classic, typical of women. Some didn't even believe that she was a woman, like they couldn't believe that a woman would be able to be that proficient at anything sporting. So to sort of counteract all of this, she put forward a reputation of being very pious, very demure, very mindful, which only, of course, fueled the rumours and speculation, so she couldn't really win in this situation. One writer raved that ZAZEL's nature was as pure and sunshiny as her face and her form were beautiful. And he also said that even though princes pursued her, ZAZEL remained the pure girl and woman that she is today, and claimed that even Queen Victoria recognised how pure she was. Surprise, surprise, she was being totally taken advantage of by her boss. And what this situation is just reminding me that everything that's happened to so many women and men in Hollywood, with like custodianships, like with Britney and all of that kind of stuff, that's nothing new. Vulnerable people are always being exploited and like used as like the front runners just to make money, to make a buck. And it's people's passions and livelihoods and lives that are being exploited. Like, so not fair. Let this girl live. So anyway, she was being taken advantage of by her boss, who was regularly travelling first class while she was travelling in economy, literally and figuratively. Like, in life, he was stealing her earnings. And she was understandably pissed at this and like kind of started talking back. And this is where she asked for more money, but he had her in checkmate because this was technically his event. So he was able, like, she wasn't able to do this trick for anybody else because he had sort of patented it. He had a lineup of other women who were also trained up to be ZAZEL, willing to take her spot if she dared get too sassy with him and demand a fair wage again. And there were so many men and women as a result of this that were claiming the namesake as ZAZEL, and she kept having to remind everybody that she was the original ZAZEL. But so many of them didn't have her skill set, and around 30 of them actually ended up losing their lives doing these tricks. You see, there was a knack for landing that ZAZEL had really nailed. That would be the difference between life and death, which many didn't really understand. But her father understood how dangerous this was, and went on a public mission to raise awareness of the dangers of getting into a cannonball and it shooting you out again. And at this point, he had separated from his wife, who didn't seem to care less because all she saw was dollar signs. And this is where ZAZEL begins down a road of the beginning of the end, when one night, through no fault of her own, she got seriously injured during one of her tricks. She managed to nail her landing, but the net, which should have been replaced, was actually rotten and didn't manage to break her fall, and she got some serious injuries. Later on that year, the net fell again when ZAZEL was using a trapeze. The audience held their breath because she was like unmoving and on the floor, and her boss made her shout out, I am killed," to let them know that she was alive. It's just such an exploitation. She was forced back up to complete her performance. Bandages for her wounds, but nothing for her anxieties. Some in the audience loved it, but lots of the critics were starting to be like, what is going on here? The relationship between her and her manager had not improved, surprise, surprise, and were becoming ever more icy. So criticisms were becoming louder, and this started to become debated in the House of Commons, where they wanted to have a bill to ban dangerous acrobatics. She was actually fuming at this and raged at the interfering men wanting to ban her livelihood. She said, I loved it. They'd just no right to take me away a living if I loved it. I was ambitious. I wanted to be great. You see, it was me art. I love this woman so much. But yeah, her manager's still being a fucking dickhead. And one example was that she asked him, do you think I should donate one of my portraits to the National Portrait Gallery? And he responded, what would the National Portrait Gallery want with a portrait of you? And she was just kind of like, because now they have 3 portraits of her because she's an icon, and he just never understood. I think he was jealous, or he fancied her. It's always one of the two. So she was at this point desperately trying to just escape Ferrani, who was just bad vibes. So she started touring with an American circus, but was still having to give him a lot of her earnings. And it was becoming quite obvious to her how much she was being exploited and how much she was being unfairly paid when compared to her contemporaries. She met a man called George and they ended up getting married. She started an opera company, but then she didn't really like the singing life, and, you know, the daredevil life kept calling her back. It was irresistible, even though she'd performed her dangerous acts hundreds of times. One night she was 40 feet up in the air balancing on a tight wire when she looked down to tell her team something, and they mistook her like for signalling to move the poles, which they did, which led to her falling through the air and landing on her hands and knees, and the pole smashing her in the back. Like, she couldn't move, her back was obviously broken, but I don't think they understood at the time that she shouldn't be moved, and they tried to push and pull her into a position, which just made it so much worse. And she was carried away screaming and spent the rest of the year in a cast, and she was just forced into an early retirement at the age of 31. She was described as an active, happy, sweet woman, and she was forced to leave her livelihood behind, and then was described as a pale, weak image of this once splendid circus queen. She spent another 2 decades with George, and then he passed away, and she spent another 2 decades alone after his untimely death. That concludes today's episode. I hope you agree that ZAZEL is an absolute icon, and she fought for her spotlight and gave it everything. So, you know, big props to ZAZEL. We love her. And she became an icon forever in life and in death. So I really hope you enjoyed that episode, and I will hope to see you next time. If you'd like to give us a like, subscribe for more. I bring out new episodes every Tuesday. Goodbye.